just
Yes.
want you to talk about the challenges that black Muslims or African Muslims that you have here in the UK.
Yes.
Because we feel that Islam is Islam and everybody will get on all right.
Yes, but as we know, that's not the case. We're living. Oh, first of all, I have to say something very controversial, but I believe it's true. The reality of the situation, the UK is the best place in the West for a black Muslim to live. We have more rights, we have more opportunities, and we have more freedom and there's more due diligence here and due process here in the UK. Now, what's happened is, in the UK, there are many born Muslims of African heritage, majority. There are a few who are from the Caribbean as well. But the majority of the Muslims who are of Caribbean heritage, they've been converted to Islam, as well as some of the African subcontinent too. Now, what's happened this mainly happened in the 60s after Malcolm X and through the 70s and 80s and 90s. And this was mainly influenced by the civil rights movement in America. Henceforth, it had a ripple effect here in the UK. Now, what's happened is a lot of Muslims then came from India, Pakistan, and North African Arabian Peninsula, So these people who came from the Asian subcontinent and the Arabian Peninsula, they already had racism issues amongst themselves. So anyone who knows anyone within the Asian community, they have issues with darker-skinned Indians that they call untouchables, where the lighter-skinned Asians who are called Brahmins. They can't marry each other. They can't walk next to each other on the street. That's among themselves. Same with the people from the Arabian Peninsula. Light-skinned Arabs are treated more favorably than darker-skinned Arabs. So these people had these racism and prejudice tendencies within their cultures. So when they came here to the UK and they saw black people who were Muslims, they thought that the same way dark-skinned Asians and dark-skinned Arabs who would follow the status quo of their culture by them treated as the low people. But black people within the UK don't put up with that rubbish. So this is where the trial and tribulation comes within the Muslim community. But what's happened is many now Muslim leaders and people who are in prime positions within the Muslim community now, they grew up here in the UK. They grew up with black people. They grew up with Winston. They grew up with Ayo. They went university with Winston, Ayo, Bilal. So a lot of them know black people. So there's a lot of people, there's some organizations. So for example, MCB, who have been guilty of disrespecting on many occasions. I never used to respect them as an organization that catered for black Muslims. But now the leadership with a person like Miqdad Versi, as a new leader of the MCB, he's a person who grew up with black people. He's met black people. He's worked with black people. He studied with black people. So with him, to engage with black people is nothing. Whereby years before, the people who were in charge of MCB, they weren't really into community cohesion. So that's where the positive change is coming. Now, black Muslims in the UK, we go through double jeopardy, as it were, whereby in the system of this Eurocentric society, black people are seen, the stereotype, seen as thugs, criminals, we're seen in a disrespectful light. Then we have the Muslims, who are seen as terrorists, extremists, crazy cultural people. So when you're telling someone that you're a black person and you're a Muslim, it can be a bit scary. So sometimes when you're going through some mainstream Middle England organizations and you're telling them that you're a black Muslim, sometimes at the first meeting, they're a bit scared, they're a bit wary of you. And after getting to know you, which might take longer than normal, when they see that, oh, he's okay, yeah, we can work with him, things would happen. I would say would be the challenge.
Yeah. So okay, now let us just see how the black Muslims in America, just briefly, because you've been there.
Yes.
You have, you know what is the situation there?
Now, when I went to America, I've been to America a few times as a Muslim and before I embraced Islam. So I found surprising was there are many of the same issues happening in America. So for example, after the civil rights movement, the movement of Malcolm X, for example, when he passed away, the Nation of Islam, who had the predominant movement of black Muslims, when Elijah Muhammad passed over the Nation of Islam to his son, Warith Muhammad, who then transformed the whole of the Nation of Islam, including Louis Farrakhan, to Orthodox Islam. And then, so many of the Nation of Islam's organizations, mosques and everything were all Orthodox Muslims. Then 3 years later, Louis Farrakhan broke away from Warith and restarted back up the Nation of Islam. Now, this happened during the early 70s. During this time, there were Asians and Arabs coming over to America with these same preconceived ideas. And first of all, they would meet a black person who's a Muslim. One of the issues that black Muslims would go through, they would automatically assume, because you're a black Muslim, you're a Nation of Islam. They wouldn't understand that, yeah, there are black Muslims who are Orthodox Muslims too. That's one of the first phase of ignorance they would go through. Second phase of ignorance. So black Muslims who fought in the civil rights movement, marching with Malcolm X, marching with Martin Luther King, and marching with Imam Jamil Al-Amin and many other activists, were fighting against racism against the Eurocentric society, then them going into a mosque, which is owned by Asian Pakistani or an Arab mosque, they would face the same level of racism, or on many occasions worse. So many black Muslims would have to fight that racism too. So there were many imams who transitioned with Imam Mu'addin to Orthodox Islam, who were challenging racism on both edges, two faces. They were challenging racism among the Asian, Indo-Arabian Muslim community and among the Eurocentric society. And what we're seeing is that there were issues of economics. This was the main issue of economics. And we would see whereby if the black Muslims are coming together, they'll be accused, oh, you're Nation of Islam. But when Arab Muslims are coming together, meeting, and where Asian Muslims are meeting, they're doing something for their community. But whereby black Muslims were kind of deterred from doing this because someone will always think, oh, people are going to say that we're part of the Nation of Islam. But what's happening now, there's people like Imam Abdul Malik Mujahid from Brooklyn, who's a very commendable speaker who's speaking about the issues of black Muslims in America. You have people like Imam Zaid Shaka, you have Imam Siraj Wahhaj. I would personally say these three are the torchbearers. And then also you have Imam Rashid from Chicago. You have people like his wife, Amina Matthews, and then you have Sister Hujra Wahhaj, the daughter of Imam Siraj Wahhaj. So now in America, what's happening? And under there's now a resurgence of a black consciousness. Yes, it's okay for you to be aware of your cultural heritage and be an Orthodox Muslim. So there's a resurgence of this now, I would say, in America, whereby it was kind of suppressed in the 90s and early 2000s.